So what I wanted to talk about today, I think everyone in this room is engaged in some form in digital recruitment. We all use it to recruit, we all use it to service our clients. We're all engaged in digital recruitment in some form. Because of the position we have in the recruitment marketplace, we see a lot of trends and themes emerging over time. And I just wanted to share a couple of those with you today, and then start to explore some of the impacts that I think and that we think some of those trends are going to have on your businesses and how you go about hiring and finding talent going forward. In order to do that, I just wanted to do literally a quick 30-second summary of Broadbean for those that don't know us, just to explain who we are, where we sit in the market, and why we think we've got a good reason to talk about this stuff. We like to consider ourselves the global leader. We don't like small boasts. The global leader in job posting distribution, job advert distribution, and wider candidate sourcing technology. So whatever digital recruitment you want to do, whatever channel you want to engage with, we aim to provide the tools, the enabling technologies to help you do that more efficiently, to help you do it in an aggregated way. So whether that's multi-posting job adverts, whether that's searching multiple CV databases, whether that's searching on your own data, we attempt to provide the tools and technology to help you do that more efficiently. And importantly, everything we do is source tracked. So as well as helping you be more efficient, we also help give you better data to help then improve things as you go forward. We're now very much a global business. So we operate now in 6 countries around the world with physical presence. So we've got 25 people now in California, we've got 6 people out in Sydney, as well as offices across Europe. And our users now total around 35,000 users across 65 countries around the world. So we see a lot of this information on a global basis too. 75% of the UK's top 250 agencies use us. And what that translates to in terms of volume is 60% of all job adverts posted online in any given month originate in our system. So we physically see and we track all of those millions of adverts that are posted out of our system every month. And those adverts translate into millions of applications every month. So in January of this year, we peaked 4 million candidate responses for the first time. And we're now tracking around that 4 million mark every single month. And on the search side, we now see in excess of 1 million candidate searches every month. So again, we get to see the proactive and the push recruitment marketing that people do. So there are a couple of key trends and themes that I wanted to just touch on a little bit more today. And they relate quite closely to one another. So I think it's quite interesting to look at them side by side. The first one of those is the view held by a lot of people now. It seems to be the prevailing wisdom, if you like, that the job board is dead. The job board doesn't have a future. They're in decline. They're not delivering what they used to deliver. And importantly, the flip side of that is that social media will be the channel that will in effect replace it. People's ability to engage with candidates directly, whether it's through the systems like LinkedIn or whether it's through some of the more social media sites, that will actually replace the need for us to use job boards. The first of those is obviously a topic quite close to our heart as a business. Our legacy and still our biggest part of our business is posting out to job boards. So if we did believe this assumption, we'd be pretty worried. But right now, we don't, and we think the data very much supports our view. If you dial back to 2008, 2009, when we were at the height of the recession, things were really, really gloomy. The ad volumes going out to the major job boards did fall dramatically. But that wasn't anything inherent in job boards. That was just the market. That was the economy, and it wasn't anything more than that. If you look at every year since 2009, you actually see a pretty substantial increase and a continuing trend upwards in terms of the volume of job adverts posted out to those job boards. So 2010, I haven't put the number down here, but 2010 saw a 20% plus increase from 2009, and we've then seen a 15% increase last year, and already in this year, in the first half, we've seen a further 11% increase. So the trends in terms of volumes of usage of job boards is going up, not down. For me, I think it reflects a couple of things. I think it reflects an increased intelligence in the way people use job boards. I think people are using more aggregation sites now. people are using, which can often be free. People are using more niche boards than they did previously. But overall, that market is seeing an increase in volume. In terms of the responses that we then see back from those adverts that have been posted, we see the same trend. We see a very substantial increase, and actually a slightly bigger increase than the number of adverts posted, in the effectiveness of job boards to attract candidates back to the recruiters that are looking to find those candidates. So LinkedIn, I think, rightly talk about the differential between active and passive candidates. And LinkedIn is a great place to find the passive candidate. And actually, they're doing a lot of really interesting and innovative things to start increasing the active candidate base within LinkedIn, starting to understand better the things that make a candidate active within LinkedIn. But actually, if you really want to see volume and you want to find those people that are ready to move jobs now, they're ready to take a job now, the job boards still deliver phenomenally well against those requirements. And we don't see that trend ending anytime soon. The 5-year out picture is quite an interesting one, because I think it's a really hard thing to gauge, because the pace of change in this industry is phenomenal. I mean, LinkedIn is 9 years old, which I find scary in its own right. But if you look at the tools that are available with systems like LinkedIn, and you just go 5 years past, we're in a very different place than we were 5 years ago. So trying to predict 5 years out, I think, is difficult. But certainly for the near future, I don't see any decline in the success and the performance of job boards. So if you believe me that and you take that point, that the assertion that job boards are in decline, you take the view that that's a myth, you flip that around and say, does that mean that actually the hype surrounding social media is also a myth? We all know the hype. Some of it I think is pretty impressive, and I always question these figures, but these are publicly available stats from surveys and research that's been done, and this is actually research from the US. 18 million employees in the US claim that they found their last job on Facebook. 18 million candidates found their last job on Facebook, a social networking site. I find that amazing. 10 million say that they found their last job on LinkedIn. I guess that's probably less of a surprise, but it's still a big number. And 8 million claim that they found their last job on Twitter. So that's the hype. The other side of the hype is from the corporate side. Corporates are engaging with social media. And both of these charts exclude specifically LinkedIn, because I think that just skews the numbers too much. But 90% of people said at the start of this year, 90% of direct employers said that they would use social networks to hire this year. And 65% of them said that they'd already made hires from those channels. So that's the hype. What do the stats show us? What does the data show us? The best way I could think of representing this and actually looking at the trends that we see in this area is to basically take a snapshot month over a period of time and see what happens to the trends that we see in the data that we have. And this is looking specifically at job adverts posted on the one hand to the key job boards and on the other hand to the key social media channels. And I've included Indeed over on the right-hand side just because I think it shows some interesting trends there too. In 2009, probably what you'd expect to see, job boards dominate, social media almost nowhere. I was surprised Twitter actually had as many adverts posted through us as it did at that point. 2010 saw a real sea change in the use of social media for posting job adverts. And specifically within Facebook, that's posting job adverts into careers pages for companies, for recruitment agencies on Facebook. But you still saw, even with the emergence of those social media sites, you still see that the job boards are dominant. They're still the core channel people are going to find people. But 2011 demonstrated something pretty stark to me, which was that people who are actually responsible for hiring people, whether directly or on behalf of their clients, have actually started posting more jobs, more vacancies to the social media sites than they are to the core job boards. Now, I didn't expect to see that when we first generated this chart a few months back, and it started to make sense when we thought about the way our clients talk to us and the support calls we have and the sales conversations we have. That all the conversations that were about social media and what people should and shouldn't be doing started to translate into numbers, whereas before it was just conversations and there wasn't anything to really stand behind it. I've updated this chart for the latest stats that we have. And what's quite interesting here is that from December 2011 to July 2012, there's actually been a 40% uptick in the volumes of ads posted to the 3 major job boards. And there's actually only been a 10% increase in the volume of ads posted to the key social media sites. So something quite interesting has happened there. The 2011 was all about everyone getting everything online onto the social media sites. And since then, although there's been an increase, there hasn't been the same kind of increase that we've seen in the paid-for channels. And we've also, at the same time, seen an overall increase in vacancies in the market. So, at the very least, there's a flattening off in the usage of social media sites through our system when compared to the other channels. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is the trend that we've seen, and you can see it across all 4 of those charts, in terms of volume going to the aggregators. And I've highlighted Indeed here as the biggest of them. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but in fact, Indeed's just been bought, or the announcement of the acquisition's just happened this morning by a Japanese e-recruitment system business. But Indeed is now by, I think, 2 times the most highly trafficked job board business in the UK. For a US aggregator, that's pretty startling. You know, it was nowhere really a couple of years ago. It's now the biggest trafficked job board business in the UK. And in the last 6 months alone, we've seen the number of ads we post to it rise from 40,000 a month to 80,000 a month. So that's, again, caught me by surprise a little bit. This is apples and pears. On the left-hand side of these charts, you've got paid-for channels. On the right, you've got free channels, easy to post jobs. You don't have to pay anything. You know, the 2 things aren't comparable. So what I then thought would be useful to look at was the response volumes that we see from these channels, and in particular on the social media sites. And again, in 2011, we saw a fundamental shift in the responsiveness, the effectiveness of the social media channels for recruitment. Facebook delivered 11 times as many responses in December as it did in January. January's a high volume month, December's a low volume month, so it's probably more like 15 times if you normalise it out. Twitter, already slightly more established over the earlier years, also saw a 6 times increase in the number of responses that it delivered. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice I've indexed these to 100 because I don't want to tell you what the actual volumes are. But it's fair to say that whilst they're not the same kind of volumes that the job boards are achieving, and they're nothing like the volumes that the job boards are achieving, they're not immaterial. We've got clients that make most of their hires from social media. So the volumes here, they don't quite compare, but they are material, and they certainly shouldn't be ignored by people looking to generate returns in recruitment. Just updated this again for the first half of this year, and it shows something quite interesting to me, which is the almost inexorable success that we saw in 2011 in terms of responses, the month-on-month growing by 50%, 100%, that hasn't happened in the first half of 2012. It hasn't fallen off a cliff, and we're seeing peaks and troughs, and we don't know why we're seeing peaks and troughs. But that growth, that acceleration seems to have tailed off. And I think what that probably has something to do with is, and we'll come on and talk about it in a minute, you only get out of social media what you put in. And I think what a lot of people did in 2011 was a little bit spray and pray. They posted everything out onto these channels because they were free, and then because they didn't put anything behind that, it didn't yield any results. And the people that were acting in that way, I think, have probably stopped using it. They've lost a degree of faith in it. It didn't deliver the value they wanted to. And we're now seeing a bit more of a sort of fluctuation month on month while people start to get their head around what works and what doesn't work. Again, just quickly, the other interesting development in the first half of this year, again, is Indeed. You see I think that's about a five-fold increase in response in the 6 months of this year, compared with only a doubling of vacancy volumes. So there's some interesting stuff happening at Indeed, which our Japanese company must have seen. So we think there's something quite interesting happening here. That there's a job board market which isn't in decline; it's still performing really well. And then there's a social media channel or channels that are clearly delivering results and are becoming an increasingly important part of an advertiser's mix or recruiter's mix. And we think that probably what this all means is you can't ignore these new channels, and at the same time you can't ignore the channels you were using previously. And it's a really it's starting to look like a really fragmented marketplace to me. You know, there are a whole raft of things you've got to be on top of as recruiters, where going back 5, 6, 7 years, really all you did in digital was post to the job boards. You know, you've got to continue posting to the job boards, and I think, you know, that's going to continue to be an important part of your mix for some time. You know, CV databases, you know, they're becoming more prevalent, again, not less. You've got to think about SEO and SEM and how you engage with Google. You've got the aggregators, you've got mobile, you've got social media. All of these channels are genuine channels for recruitment, and it's your job to be on top of all of these, and at times I don't envy you that. Facebook, I think, is one area where I think we all need to look at what we're doing in that channel and recognise that most of us are not doing it justice. Most of us in this room probably now have a Facebook, a corporate, an agency Facebook page. Most of us are probably now posting jobs to that channel. I'm not sure if that's true, but I would imagine a large proportion of you are. But for a lot of you, that's where it ends. And that isn't a Facebook strategy. That's dabbling in Facebook. And the one thing I think about social media is the worst thing you can do is dabble. I think you either go for it or you ignore it. Because if you dabble, all you do is encourage people to participate in your dabbling. And if you're doing a really bad job of it, people will tell you you're doing a bad job of it. And not only will they tell you you're doing a really bad job of it, they'll tell all their friends, all their contacts, all their partners that you're doing a really bad job of it. And I look at some of the Facebook pages of our clients, and they're not doing enough with it. There's a perception that it's this free channel that you should exploit, but you've got to do more than just post. You've got to do more than just sort of spray and pray. I've pulled together just a few do's and don'ts, which I think are all fairly obvious, so I don't plan to go through all of these in turn. But I think what we all need to do when we're looking at Facebook is we just need to be a bit smart about it. We need to look at what Facebook is. We need to look at the language that people use when they're engaging with each other on Facebook. And we need to respond in kind. We need to be human about the way we communicate with people. People go to Facebook for regular updates, regular information, more information. So you can't just put static information out there and expect people to come back. You've got to engage with people, and you've got to let them engage with you. It's all about being social and about providing interactions and engagement with people. And then one of the things that I'd encourage everyone to go and do, because I just think it's fascinating, and maybe that's just because I'm a bit sad, is go onto the Facebook platform. If you've got careers pages, you've got jobs you're trying to fill, go into their equivalent of PPC. So they have a platform where you can go in and you can sponsor your own adverts. It takes 5 minutes. You can all do it. I managed to do it. You can all do it. And you can target a very, very narrow niche demographic within Facebook, right down to an unbelievable level of granularity. You can set maximum spends. You don't need to spend a fortune. You can spend a tenner and see what happens on your own credit card. But it's a really interesting thing to do, and it shows you what you can and can't do on Facebook. On the don't side, again, I'm not going to go through them. The one thing I would say is the first one of those. You've posted and I've just realised that in moving from my Mac to the PC, some of this hasn't transferred across very well. Don't assume that you've got a Facebook strategy if you're posting jobs to Facebook, because you haven't. You've only got a Facebook strategy if you understand what you're trying to achieve, you understand what the platform's good for, and you're engaging with it properly. Then you've got a strategy. Otherwise, you're doing what most of us do, and that's just pumping jobs through to Facebook and hoping you get the odd bit of response. Twitter is another interesting area. I think Twitter should not be ignored. The volumes of responses that we showed on the response chart a few minutes back, the volumes on Twitter are actually much higher than the volumes on Facebook. People, again, genuinely fill jobs out of Twitter. And what I think you need to kind of recognise is how people use Twitter. People will follow brands that they respect and regard. Now, that's great for corporates, but I think even for this audience, where you have a niche and you've got an expertise, you've got lots of content that you can share with people, and you can very easily build up a following of people that want to observe what you've got to say and want to hear what you've got to say. And those people will also listen to jobs that come through that feed. that you post through that feed. And that's a genuine channel that you shouldn't be ignoring. And I actually think it's an easier channel to exploit than Facebook is. Because although you need to put content out, I don't think you need the same volume of content. People don't expect as much from it, I don't think. They're getting information from so many sources on Twitter. They don't necessarily expect so much from the individual company, the individual agency. So I think it's an easier thing for you to engage with, but it still needs to be done properly. We're a bit obsessed at Broadbean, and again, there's been a lot of talk about data and making sure that everything's tracked and understood. We're becoming, and we always have been, a little bit obsessed by data and making sure you understand the data that you have. Everything through Broadbean is source tracked. So every response you get, we can tell you where you got it from, and there's a huge amount of interactivity that you can do within our system to ensure that you really stay on top of measuring response and measuring the effectiveness of the channels that you have. But the reason I've got it here is that this is just as important for social media, because it isn't free. Because we've just talked about the fact that you probably need to hire at least one person whose job is going to predominantly be managing your Facebook page, managing the content and the voice that you have within Facebook. You're probably going to need someone else that is engaged in Twitter. It might be the same person, it might not be. But it isn't free. And so if you're not measuring your response and you're not tracking the effectiveness of those channels, you're not actually really understanding the ROI you're getting from social media. And it then makes it impossible to compare to your job board performance and the other channels that you use. So source tracking is key all the time, but I think it's just as key in the world of social media. And the final area for me that I think it becomes increasingly important as we move into this incredibly fragmented world is making sure you use effectively all of the data that you have within your business. We've all got thousands and thousands of responses that we get every single month. They're not all right for the particular job that you're looking to fill at that particular time, but they may well be right for the next job that comes into the business. You need to use that data, and you need to share it across the whole of your business. We don't want data sitting in inboxes that's searchable by you and not by anybody else. It's got to be made available to everyone. And as you're getting more data in from more sources, this becomes more important, because every time you don't use it, you're throwing money down the drain. The screenshot on the page at the moment is our new internal search offering, which helps you exploit that in a very effective and efficient manner. I'm getting the hurry up, so really all I wanted to do was finish on a quote that is always associated with Charles Darwin, but I put it in my presentation this morning and I thought, you know what, I'd better look and make sure it was Charles Darwin. Turns out it wasn't. No one knows who said this, but I think it's particularly relevant to the conversation that we've been having. If we don't adapt and if we don't change, and if we don't exploit the channels that become available to us, someone else will be, and someone will be doing a better job of it than we are. So by experimenting with what's out there, by understanding what's out there, I think we can all become much, much more efficient and better at what we do. And I think you've all got a great opportunity to lead the way in doing that. And I think it's a great market that we're all in, and I think you guys do a great job. And I'm excited to continue working with those of you that we already work with, and hopefully working with some of you that we don't. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.